Hey, welcome back to Pages of Light, where we analyze literature from a Christian worldview. If that sounds like something that you're into, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell down below so you don't miss any new videos. So today we're going to be taking a look at the hardcover release of The Last God, Book 1 of the Fellspyre Chronicles, which released earlier this month. This series was written by Philip Kennedy Johnson with the art from Riccardo Federici. And this hardcover release collects all 12 chapters of the comic. It has a one-shot called Songs of Lost Children, and then it also has an expanded version of the D&D 5th edition sourcebook that you can use in your D&D campaigns, and that sourcebook is called Tales of the Book of Ages. So as usual, I'll take a look at this comic, and I'll give you my general thoughts about it, and then we'll look at a few things from a Christian worldview perspective. So let's just jump into this comic. Two fellowships of heroes struggle with the same threat, 30 years apart. One group will doom their world, the other must try to save it. 30 years ago, a fellowship of brave heroes traveled beyond the borders of reality and killed the last living god, Mol Oltep, saving the realm of Canaan from destruction. But when the undead armies of the last god return, it becomes clear that the aging fellowship might not be the great heroes they claim to be. With the world burning down, a new, unlikely group of champions will come together to try to bring peace to their world. But to do that, they'll have to kill the last god once and for all. So before I give you my thoughts on the comic, I wanted to show you some of the stuff you're going to get with this hardcover if you're thinking about buying it. So if you take off the dust jacket and you open it up here, you're going to see you get some interesting stuff. Some of the maps and stuff that are blown up to be really big. So you have the Black Stair map there on the left, and then you have the Guild Eldritch, the tower that the heroes go to at one point in the story. And then if you open up the dust jacket again, you get just a big map of Canaan, and then you get some maps of the city of Tirgalad over there, and then I can't remember where this map is, but that's another map in the story. Yeah, so just a massive map of Canaan there. Maybe you could frame it if you really want to. So then looking at the physical hardcover, this is what it looks like on without the dust jacket. So this is the front of it. Still looks pretty nice without the dust jacket. You could just put it on your shelf like this if you prefer how it looks like this. You have the first issue cover on the back here, which is a nice touch. And then on the inside flap, you have a map of Canaan again, like you did in the inside of the dust jacket. And then on the back flap, you have the map of the Black Stair again, same as you had on the inside dust jacket. And then as you go through the comic here, you have the first 12 issues of the comic as they were, like they released in issue format. So you have each issue, and then you have the bonus material at the end of each issue, like the songs and stuff. Like there's the bonus stuff from the first issue, Petal Black, Petal Gray, a little song that people will sing. And then you also get like these fun little stories in the comic. This one's talking about Queen Sayuli of Rivers, part 1, and then in the second issue you got part 2 to that story. So each issue had some bonus interesting stuff that you got to see at the end of each issue, which is really cool. So after you go through all the 12 issues there, you get to the appendix, which is where they have the one shot Songs of Lost Children. So again, it gives you like the cover that it had in release issue format, and then the story. And then at the very end, you have the D&D source book of Lost Tales, and that just has some expanded stuff that it compared to what it had in the original issue release. So yeah, there you can see like the same map of Tirgalad that we had on the inside of the dust jacket, and then it has just some interesting stuff about the places in Canaan, how the history of stuff, a lot of the history of creation of the world, stuff like that, information about the races and the beasts of the world, and stuff about how to make your characters. And it has also a few subclass options for like a paladin or like a ranger, just some stuff that you can make your D&D campaign a little bit more interesting and specifically unique to the world of Canaan. So yeah, that's what you get with the hardcover if you're interested. And now let's just jump into my general thoughts on the comic as a whole. So I'll just start off by saying that The Last God is everything that I want in a comic book set in a grimdark, high fantasy setting, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading each issue every month. This comic has excellent storytelling and world building, and the way the story unfolds following two groups pursuing the same goal just 30 years apart provides the reader with an engaging story in the present day while also providing historical context of what had come before through the memories of Cyanth, mostly the Queen of Tirgalad, who's a member of both fellowships, the past and the present. And I love learning about what the original fellowship did to cause the return of the Flowering Dead, which are like the main enemies that our characters will fight throughout the story. They're these plant-like creatures that will infest and hijack the bodies of people and turn them against our heroes. Additionally, another great thing about this comic is that at the end of each issue, we get a little piece of lore or a song or something that's just part of the world of Canaan. So, for example, we get to learn about one of the greatest queens of the Elven nations. Her name was Queen Sauli of Rivers, and so we learn about how she murdered her brother and became a slave, but then also went on later in life to build one of the greatest cities in the world. As for the music, for example, we have the song Petal Black, Petal Gray, which is a happy tune that people will sing at taverns and such, but it actually has chilling lyrics about the horrors of the Flowering Dead and people getting murdered. Sort of a mirror to our Ring Around the Rosie song, potentially. And then there's also a hymn called the Hymn to Freyth, which is an important historical work in the world of Canaan because it's one of the oldest examples of written language that they have, but it's also a vital hymn to the faith and the people of Tirgalad and the Riverlands. And it's just small things like this that are in this comic that make the story and the world just feel very real, like people could actually live here and there's actually like life that's breathed into this story in this world. So another part of the world building that was just spectacular was the exploration of the history of the world, creation, and how things came to be how they are now in the story. So in chapter 5 of this series, which is called The Song of Angluthia, we get a few page spread about how Angluthia, who's kind of like the original god, and so we get the story of how she awoke in the void amidst all of this darkness, and she used her light to push back the darkness and create her children, who would then go on to create the other races of Canaan. And yeah, this is just, I love the small little things, and it's the small little details that you add into stories like this that just really make it come alive and like go the extra mile. And I just love this type of world building. It makes the world feel very old and full of mystery, and it makes me want to keep reading to explore more about the history of the different races, the kingdoms that rose and fell over time, and the stories of magic that was used for good or for evil. As for the characters, most of them are all pretty compelling, but I think the main character throughout the story is Queen Cyanth, because we get to follow her story from 30 years ago with the original fellowship, and in the present day with the current fellowship trying to finish what that previous group could not. So we get to see her story as she looks back into the past with regret on things that they should have done differently during that time period. And each of these fellowships is also pretty diverse, so we get to see an interesting dynamic between the different races and how they interact with each other. And then most of the characters get a good backstory, whether it's a few pages to really flesh out some of the main characters or just a few lines of dialogue to give each kind of character their day in the sun, so you can kind of just get a little bit of a picture of what they're all about and kind of where they came from to get to where they are today. Lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the art, and just to put it simply, it was just spectacular. Hats off to you, Riccardo Federici. Your art is amazing, and I loved every bit of it. It was dark and gritty, and it fit perfectly with the themes of the story, and the creatures were epic and monstrous and filled with details, and the fighting scenes were also very engaging and easy to follow along as well with all of the different action. I just wanted to show you a picture of one of my favorite scenes in the book. They're fighting this dragon, which is just super epic. So yeah, just take a look at that. Oh yeah, that is just some epic dragon fighting right there. So Yeah, I'll definitely be on the lookout for anything that has Ricardo's name on it, because I know that the art will just be amazing. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the price of this hardcover. So this is priced at $50, which is actually a pretty good deal, because if you were to buy all of the things individually over time like I did, it'd come out to about $70 for everything. So if you want to just read everything in like as a whole and get it all at once, this is actually a better deal, unless you like to collect individual issues instead. But the hardcover actually is a good value if you want to get all of those things collected in one edition. And this also has the expanded version of that D&D source book, so which you can't get in the original issue format that was released in. So that's some bonus material that you also get in the hardcover. So I would recommend the hardcover if you want to get the whole story in one package. So in conclusion, I would highly recommend this comic series if you're looking for a gritty, dark fantasy comic series. Ever since I started reading comics, probably a few years ago, this has definitely been my favorite series that I have read so far. And if you have any other suggestions for comics that are similar to this, please leave me a comment down below. I love high fantasy and dark fantasy comic series. The closest I've probably read is Seven to Eternity by Rick Remender. I know that's getting a few new issues coming out at the moment, but I'm waiting, instead of reading them in issue format, to grab the trade paperback, because I already have a few of those in my collection. So yeah, highly recommend this comic series, and it definitely gets a 10 out of 10 from me, and hope you guys would check it out. All right, for the Christian worldview analysis portion of this video, I wanted to look at two topics, and the first is going to be a comparison between the creation story that we have in The Last God and then the creation story that we have in the Bible. And then the second is going to be an encouragement for Christians, just a reminder that in the end, light will have victory over darkness. So in The Last God, we are given the story of creation, of Angluthia, who is essentially God, awakening, creating its children who are kind of lesser gods or angels maybe, and then she also creates the rest of the world of Canaan and the different races. And then at one point, one of her youngest children, Mol Koresh, asks her what lies beyond Canaan, and Angluthia essentially replies with saying that there's nothing, and that nothing that's beyond Canaan was created by me, so you shouldn't really pursue any of those things out there. So contrast that with the biblical story. We have a difference between God and Angluthia, where Angluthia at some point in time awoke, whereas God has always existed. He never had to awake from anything, because he's always been there, and he always will exist. He exists outside of time and outside of the rules of this world, because he created time, and he created all of the rules of the world. Another difference between God and Angluthia is that Angluthia has to take power from itself in order to create other beings. So at one point in the comic we read, "Finally, Angluthia took the light from a star it had made and bled its own life into it, weakening itself so that its creation might live. Angluthia gave the creation thought from Angluthia's mind, music from Angluthia's own voice, and the being that Angluthia had made awoke." And then so we can contrast that story in The Last God with what the biblical account is in Genesis 1:26 through 27, where we read, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them.'" So as we see in the biblical story of creation in previous verses and in the ones that I just read, God's creation only requires him to speak things into existence. He doesn't have to make himself weaker or give up a piece of himself in order to make something new in the world. And this is what's called creatio ex nihilo, which is Latin for creation out of nothing. I'm sure I butchered that phrase in the Latin though, so please forgive me. So this little comparison between Angluthia and our God can just serve as a reminder for Christians that God is more powerful than any other supposed gods that exist in this world, and he's more powerful than anything that we can conceive of in fantasy stories. And it's also important to remember that his love, his grace, and mercy towards his creation is beyond anything that we can fathom. And so speaking of the power of God, this leads us into the second topic that we're going to discuss, which is about the coming day where God will once and for all defeat death, sin, and Satan for all eternity. And while this event is guaranteed in the book of Revelation and throughout the Bible, it's not going to be an event that comes without great sacrifice and loss. In the book of Revelation, we can get a glimpse of this. So, for example, in Revelation chapter 20, we get to see the devil's death toll before he's bound by Jesus. So, starting in verse 1, we read, "Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding the key of the abyss and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he threw him into the abyss, and shut it and sealed it over him, so that he would not deceive the nations any longer, until the 1,000 years were completed. After these things he must be released for a short time. Then I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given to them. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony of Jesus, and because of the word of God, and those who had not worshipped the beast or his image, and had not received the mark on their forehead and on their hand. And they came to the life, and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years." So here in this passage, we see that to stand with Christ means that we lay down our life for something that's greater than ourselves. And we may lose our physical bodies, but we are promised a new, perfect, and resurrected body, and that we will reign together with Christ in the end. And then in Revelation chapter 21, we get a glimpse of this new heaven and new earth. And this will be the encouragement that I can leave you with for this video, that Jesus is making all things new, and that his words are faithful and true. "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be among them. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will no longer be any death. There will no longer be any mourning, or crying, or pain. The first things have passed away.' And he who sits on the throne said, 'Behold, I am making all things new.' And he said, 'Write, for these words are faithful and true.' Then he said to me, 'It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give to the one who thirsts from the spring of the water of life without cost. He who overcomes will inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son." If you enjoyed this video and you got value out of it, please hit the like button down below. It lets the algorithm know that more people should see this content, and then you can also subscribe and hit the bell so you see more videos like this in your feed. You can also leave me a comment if you like. If you've read The Last God in this whole series, please let me know your thoughts down there. And if you haven't read the comic, let me know your thoughts on some of the Christian worldview related topics that we discussed at the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Remember to keep reading and to share the gospel with somebody this week. I thoroughly enjoyed. I already said I thoroughly enjoyed. Think of a new word, bro.